with our last 10 minutes together, it's going to be really, really practical about how we can step into the privilege of his presence and power every day at any time, right? So John Calvin talked about something called rule of life. And what rule of life is kind of looking at the broad spectrum of our lives and considering years, months, weeks, and days, and then filling those natural transitions and seasons with things that orient or recenter the heart around the presence and power of God, acknowledging that our drift will not be towards those things, but self-reliance. And so what I thought we'd do is we just talk through a rule of life, and really the only one I know is mine, so I want to walk through my rule of life. And look where I am. I need you to hear me say this. All that I'm about to describe to you is inconsistent and messy. So just breathe out, inconsistent and messy. The next book I'm going to write is going to be called Inconsistent and Messy, a guide to Christian living. Right? And so I want to walk through my rule of life. I'm going to start with day, and I'll make my way through year. And here's the great thing. All that I'm about to cover, none of it justifies us. Right? You spending time in the Word, orienting like this, it's about you enjoying the privilege of power and presence. It's not about salvation. Right? You've been covered in the righteousness of Christ. Right? But you can walk in greater power, a greater awareness of his presence, and be a more centered, joy-filled person, even in the midst of trials. So let's walk through rule of life. So here's my rule of life for a day. Inconsistently and with a lot of mess. I try to get up about 5 to 5:15 every morning, Monday through Friday, and I want to spend an hour in the Bible and with my journal. The reason I'm up at 5 and not 6 is my two littles get up at 6, and I am not the personality type that can continue to read, think, or write when there are two small children slurping cereal on both my side. Maybe you can handle that. That's just something weird to my soul, so I've just got to shut everything down. I've just got to enter that space with them until they learn to eat like human beings. So I just start. I mean, when they get up at 6, I close everything down, and then I just start to help. And so I kind of help them get their bowls, and then help them remember to put them in the dishwasher, and that their mom's not their servant. And then I pour a cup of coffee for Lauren and get Lauren, and then Lauren comes and joins us, and then we wake up Audrey, and that's a process. If you've got a 14-year-old, they don't pop right up and go, yay, it's a new day. And so then we get her dressed, and then about that time, usually I've got to head off to my first meeting, and I use the 5 minutes in my truck to the office, to the breakfast, to elder meeting, wherever I'm going, to just pray through what I've got. That I just pray through my calendar. I just want to ask the Lord to bless those moments that I have that day. I want to honor the Lord. I want to be mindful of his presence and power. When I meet with the elders, I'm asking for supernatural wisdom. When I'm meeting with a member of the church, I want to ask for words that encourage and build them up, or the courage to point out some foolishness that they've given themselves over to. But even then, I want to be kind and compassionate. And then, man, I'm just praying through my calendar. And then I want to build in natural buffers so that my day doesn't cascade as best I can. I'm looking for natural transitions in which to reorient my heart around who God is and what he's accomplished for me in the person and work of Jesus Christ. So what that means is I want to create a 10-minute gap between meetings or tasks where I can stop, pray about that task, orient my heart around my need for God in that task, and then enter into it. And then right before I leave for lunch, I read a prayer out of the Valley of Vision, right? It's an old book of Puritan prayers. We read it a lot here. It's a beautiful resource for guided prayer. And so I read a prayer, and then I head to lunch. On my drive to lunch, I'm praying for who I'm having lunch with. I'm asking for wisdom, discernment. And then on the way back from lunch, I'm praying about what I have next and praying about what just happened at that lunch. At the end of the day, before I leave my office, I want to take stock of my heart. I'm an achiever, which means I can get really frustrated if I didn't get done all that I wanted to get done that day, which is, by the way, every day of my life, I think. And so I don't want to carry that frustration home with me. And so, man, I just want to remind myself that God is God and I am not, and I'm leaving all this here, and I'm not going home to work another 6 hours on it. I'm going to leave it right here, and the Lord's got it while I eat and sleep and fulfill my obligations as husband and father. And then I get in the truck, and one of the more important drives that I ever make is that drive home, because I need to shift my mind and heart into second shift mode. In my stage of life, I have no idea what I'm walking into. None. I mean, I could walk in the door to a waft of dinner being cooked and the children doing a little devotional at the table and the house is clean. Or I could walk in and something could be on fire and Lauren could look at me like I've done something wrong against her and her entire lineage, and we could have lost a kid on the trails. I have no idea what I'm walking into, so I want to stop for a second, breathe out, and remind myself that I get the distinct privilege of loving Lauren Chandler and Audrey and Reed and Nora, and that this is a gift that's been given to me, not any other man, to me. And I get the privilege of walking in, and if crap's burning and an animal's missing and we can't find Nora, I get to step into that space and just go, how can I help you, boo? What would you want? What's the priority? It's not, the dog is not the priority, baby. It's Nora, our child, who's lost on the trails, right? And then I'll go and then bring it all. And it gives me the opportunity, because listen, I'm most tired and most self-reliant starting at around 6. I just am. I am such a selfish person starting at about 6 at night. I've been up since 5. I've been grinding all day. And when I'm grinding, I don't have view that anyone else is, right? Isn't that a weird thing? Like when I'm grinding, it's out of my head that Lauren's doing the same thing at home. And so I just need to reorient my heart before I walk in the door, or I'm going to sin against my wife and sin against God. And then we're going to have dinner as often as we can together as a family. Again, this is inconsistent and messy. As often as we can, we're going to gather, and we're going to pray for our meal, which orients our hearts around God's provision for us, and then we're going to play the high-low game. It's one of my favorite things we do as a family. My littlest, my 7-year-old, is actually the high-low police. She's going to always just go, high-lows, you start. I'm like, you're not the boss. I'll start. And so what that is, hey, what was your favorite part of the day, and what was your least favorite part of the day? And if you've got optimist children, so I've got 2 optimists and 1 that's not, they're like, there wasn't a low today. And so I'm like, no, what's your least favorite awesome moment then? Right? That's not how this game works, right? It's what's your least favorite good thing? And we want to just celebrate the goodness and grace of God. We want to pray about the things. Or if it's a significant low, we want to stop and pray and minister one another in that. And then we're going to start the bedtime process, which is where I need the strength of the Holy Spirit of God, unlike any other domain in which I operate. Like, how can you be that thirsty at 9 o'clock at night? Like, I don't understand what's driving this. I can't sleep. We're not in the desert. Get back in your bed. And it's prayers and it's snuggles. And then I go down, we catch up, Lauren and I catch up. And then I get in bed. And here's what I do. I want to lay in bed at night. I want to recount. This takes 5 minutes. By the way, everything I'm talking about here is 2 minutes here, a minute here, 3 minutes. I don't care if you're the president and CEO of Giga Mega Industries. You've got a drive to work. You've got 2 minutes before lunch. You've got a minute and a half on your way. You've got all this space. This doesn't require a seminary degree and nothing to do but study the Bible, right? This is presence and power made available to you. I want to lay in bed at night. I want to recount how God's heard my prayers and He's answered it. And then I want to remind myself as I drift off to sleep that none of my behavior that day affected God's love for me. I don't go, oh man, because the reason I'm saying inconsistent and messy, if I go out with my crew and I don't get in till midnight, then the godliest thing I know to do is to sleep till 7 and not get up at 5. And I might have just blown your mind. You're like, I can't believe he said that. What is more godly than getting up early and getting in the Word? Well, according to the angel that spoke to Elijah, eating a good meal and getting some sleep. All right, like here's what I can tell you. I am a terrible human being if I am exhausted and starving. Like, I am so in my flesh if I'm exhausted and starving. So sometimes the godliest thing you can do is get some rest and eat something. Right? And so, man, if I forgot Valley of Vision, I didn't get a chance to do that before lunch, or, man, I didn't do some other things, or we didn't high-low at dinner, I'm not going to lay in bed at night and go, I'm so sorry, God. Please, I'm so sorry. Because God's affections hasn't been shaped like that. I'm cloaked in the righteousness of Christ. What I missed out on is the privilege to walk all the more in that power and presence. His affection for me hasn't been affected. My awareness of that affection was affected. That's why I'm telling you, this is an invitation into privilege. It's not punitive and it's not law. And then on the weeks, my family worships at the Village Church every week. Last night we sat right here in these seats. I needed to access down there, so I sit with my family at the 5 on Saturday nights. We sat right there, and this is something we do. We believe that God supernaturally shapes us in the gathering of the saints and commitment to an imperfect group of people. And so we feel most comfortable here because of the imperfection of this place. And if you're new, we'll let you down soon, okay? You're like, this place is great. No, just give us time. Just give us a little bit of time, right? You're just new to the family, right? We've got weird uncles here just like you do, right, in your family. And so we're going to be serious about that. We're committed to the Village Church. We're committed financially. We're committed in gifts. We're committed in energy, thought, prayer, life. We're committed. We're going to worship weekly. Every Wednesday, I fast from breakfast and lunch, and my metabolism is still up there. And so when I get really hungry on Wednesday, it's a reminder to me that I have a hunger and a desire that's greater than that desire. It just for a second reorients me. It's not legalistic. It reorients my heart. And the moment it doesn't do that, I'm not going to do it anymore. And that is weekly. We try to have a family devotional every week. It's inconsistent and messy. So again, I just want to kind of let you breathe a little bit as you cloak yourself in the righteousness of Christ and take advantage of the privilege of power and presence that's made available to you. Then every month, I have something called The Day. And it's a day that I don't turn on my phone, I don't open up my computer, I take my Bible and my journal, and I just try to press into the Lord all day. Now look right at me. As romantic as that sounds, there is no day that I do that's more difficult for me than that. It's like 11 o'clock, and I've prayed for everyone, including every country that I can think of. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing the rest of the day, Lord? Like waiting on the Lord. That's such a, I wish I could tell you that on the day, every once in a while, an angel shows up. He's like, hey, this way, I want to talk to you. Jesus wanted me to tell you some stuff. That hadn't happened. It's exhausting to me. Again, I'm an achiever. Like my inner persister achiever is just so stressed out. I want to do something. Let me do something for you, Lord. And he's like, no, you need me. You don't need to do anything. I'm doing stuff. I'm just using you, dummy. Get over here. What you need is me. And over the last few years, God has used that to profoundly shape me. But every time I see it on the calendar, there's this real mixture of, right? Like I know it's good for the heart and I know it's going to be difficult. I can thrive if you give me a project to drive and drive home and score. I just get wore out if I'm just sitting and thinking and praying, Lord, help us, right? It's just hard for my personality. And here's why. It's not a personality. It's hard for all of us. Why? Because our drift is towards self-reliance. And then when we talk about years, my family celebrates Advent, right? We want to remember and mark annually the coming of Jesus in the flesh. And then what we do every New Year's Eve for the last 9 years, my closest friends, we come together at my house on New Year's Eve and we just have this epic feast. They show up at 4. This last year it went till 2 a.m. We're preparing the food at the house. It's good food. Man, don't you bring some weak like pickled beets nonsense up into this house, right? We're going to get it. And there's good bottles of drink and there's good food that we're cooking. And we're going to start at 4 and we're going to rejoice and celebrate that Christ has come into the world to save us from sin. And right now, we're in the middle of Lent. And I'm not doing Lent because it pleases the Lord. I'm doing Lent because it orients my heart around my need for the resurrected King. And then this Easter, we're going to do a little family lunch, and then once again at 4 o'clock, my crew's on their way over. And we've already started divvying up who's bringing what and who gets the grill when. And once again, we're going to get it. And there's going to be 170 kids. It's going to look like somebody kicked an ant pile, and there's going to be no rules around what those kids can or can't eat, just like a big bowl of buttered noodles. Get it, right? You don't have to eat no veggies, right? Christ is risen. And we're just going to get after it because celebrating pleases the heart of God. Like we talked about this just a little bit last night. Like what's broken in us that we can't celebrate these things? And I mean, celebrate them. And so we need to get better at this. And so next Sunday, after preaching, I think a bajillion times, I haven't counted it up, I'm going to go home, sleep for a few, and then we're going to get after it. I'm not working on Monday. Kids don't have school. I don't know when it'll end. I'll report. I'll come back and report. And this is good, right? It's formative. It shapes us. And it's a reminder and an invitation into our privilege. The power and presence of God, not in the tabernacle, not through dead ritual, through a living invitation to dwell in and with the Spirit of God. Like, think how this might mark us as a community of faith. So here's what I would say. Husbands, look at me real quick. The best version of you that exists is one rooted and centered in a relationship with God through the Spirit. Right? So you can have a long list of the things you want to do for your spouse, but if we're honest, almost all of us are intention over action. We have 1,000 good intentions that we never get around to. You know when you're at your best? When you've been in the presence of God. Wives, you're at your best when you've been in the presence of God. You're the best parent when you're in the presence. You're more generous when you've been in the presence of God. You're more alive and energetic and filled with life when you've been in the presence of God. So to not enter this privilege is a foolish punt of our rights as children of God. And so if you're looking at rule of life, here's how I want to encourage you. Don't go, oh, that's awesome, starting tomorrow, blah, 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 blah. No, you'll burn yourself out. Here's what I want you to do. However you're kind of orienting your life around God right now, I want you to just add some little thing to it for a month. Don't add anything else, just one little thing. And you're like, I'm better than that. No, that's a drift toward self-reliance. I'm sure you are better than that for about 4 weeks before you stop doing it altogether. So if you don't have that time where you're orienting your heart around the things of God for the day, I want to just help you. Start with getting up a little bit earlier and getting into the Bible. Writing down what's going on in your heart. Writing out your prayers of what you want to see God accomplish in your heart, in your life, in your family, in this church. And then after a month of that, and listen, if you miss 2 days, God isn't like, really? On Easter week, you're going to miss 2 days? Are you not aware of what's going on right now? So apparently my life isn't worth 5 days. Apparently it's just worth 3. That's not how the Lord thinks. That's how you think. Because you're trying to build your life on self-reliance rather than presence and power. Let's just try to, as consistently as we can, let's get up a little bit earlier. Let's get in the Bible. Let's write out. Let's get naturally curious. What's going on here? What is this word? What is that? Why is this in front of that one? And just get naturally curious. That's fun. And then after a month of that, just add a little something, right? Just some little tiny, I'm going to pray on my drive to work for the activities of that day. Or right before I go to lunch, I'm going to stop for a second. Or maybe the situation you're in right now is you need to just immediately add that drive home, prep your heart thing, so that you can walk into your home with light and life in you rather than expectation and selfish desire in you. And then like after a month, add something else. And after a month, add something else. Now, here's the thing. Think about your life in terms of decades and not just seconds. Now, everything in our modern day is trying to get you to think of life in 140 characters. That's not how God sees us or desires to shape us. So you don't have to right now jam all this into the world as you know it. No. Just little steps over a long period of time produce a type of fruitfulness that's beyond our wildest imaginations right now. Step into your privilege as sons and daughters of God. I know you're great and gifted and disciplined, but all of that self-reliance, the reason that God is saying here, if you don't honor the Sabbath, I'll put you to death, is because to not honor the Sabbath is to put yourself to death. To step out of presence and power and into self-reliance will not produce the type of fruitfulness that you want in your life. Jesus says in John 15, apart from me, you can do nothing. So that the good fruit that our hearts desire to bear, that we want our lives to produce, is found in abiding with Jesus, this invitation to walk into it. You can do this. Like I'm just telling you, you can do this. You drive to work. You have a Bible. You can orient your heart right before lunch. You can orient your heart on the drive home. You can do this, and we would be a more vibrant and alive fellowship if we would give ourselves over to these things. Let me pray for us.